Today, we are doing a camera comparison test between these two devices right here. We have the Pixel 4a 5G and the Pixel 6a. These are Google's budget lineup phones, and outside of North America, the last Pixel prior to the 6a was the 4a 5G. So we're going to be comparing these cameras directly side by side to see if there's any real difference between these devices. They do have the same sensor, which has been used throughout the past few Pixel devices back all the way to the Pixel 2. So we'll just have to see if there's any computational differences because this uses the tensor chip and this doesn't. We'll just have to see if that makes any difference whatsoever. And I think you guys will be actually kind of surprised. Okay, so I'm at my desktop right now and I've gone out, I've taken all my photos, and now I'm gonna compare them side by side and we'll really see if there's much difference. So the first photo right here, it was just outside by the beach. I was meeting up with my friend that I haven't seen in a while, and honestly, they're super similar. I would say maybe there's slightly brighter midtones and shadows on the 6A. It's also a slight tad bit warmer, but other than that, pretty identical there. So the next photo up is of Brody Ferry Castle, and this is a pretty beautiful spot. You may be thinking, it's kind of cloudy, not the best of pictures. I tried my best, it's super hard to capture nice photos when the sky is just gray and dull. It just makes everything look super crappy, honestly. But yeah, so we have a little bit of blue in the sky here, and I can tell you they're pretty similar again. Now, I would say Pixel 6a, maybe a little bit more saturation in the grass right here, and other than that, I would say the shadows are a little bit darker over here as well. So other than that though, they are very similar yet again. So this next one up, I would say a little bit warmer on the Pixel 6a than on the 4a 5G. We'll see that pretty much throughout all the photos. They are just a little bit warmer on the new phone, which I kind of appreciate, kind of like that. I'm not really a big fan of those cool images. They just look a bit blue. I don't like that blue tone they have. Pretty great dynamic range. You must admit, Pixel has unbelievable dynamic range, and that's because of the computational photography. So again, this photo right here of the drone, amazing dynamic range here. The sky is not overexposed, but then all these shadowy bits down here are not underexposed either. They're actually really balanced. So if you are looking for a great camera, the Pixel definitely is an amazing device for taking pictures. Something actually better on this photo specifically is there's a lot more in focus. So it has all the details of the rocks here in the foreground, whereas on the 4a 5G, it's kind of a little bit blurred there, not quite in focus. And there's also a slight green haze on the foreground in the 4a 5G, which isn't on the 6a. Other than that though, they are pretty similar. I would say there's maybe a slight tad bit more detail on the Pixel 6a as well if you were to zoom in. So this one was just in the local park. Again, not the best weather, but I did try. And you can actually see here there's a better job of the exposure on the 4a 5G. So the sky here isn't blown out, whereas on the 6a, it's very blown out and white. Not too much difference. The one thing I can actually tell you is the tree is in focus on the 4a 5G, and the tree was actually swaying in the wind, whereas on the 6a, it didn't do a good job of capturing that. It's very kind of blurry. So now this one was kind of a little bit of a low light situation. It was definitely not the best lit. However, I think both of them did a very good job, and something nice about Pixels is they handle really well in low light. So I did want to sort of push them a little bit and challenge them. And yeah, I can say Pixel 6a looks nicer, a little bit more sharp, and overall there's less noise, and I'm pretty sure if we zoom in here, it's about the same in terms of detail. So very similar overall, yet again. Colors are actually very close on some of these daylight shots. The only real difference I noticed is when you get to the nighttime shots, which we'll see coming up. So in this photo, I can say the colors are more warm on the Pixel 6a. With the tree in this one, I would say it's a little bit brighter, so it's kind of boosting these shadows a little bit more. Whereas honestly, I would say the 4a 5G is more realistic. The colors look more accurate in this photo. So on this photo right here, a little bit closer, and there's some natural blur, there's some natural bokeh in the background. This isn't portrait mode or anything. I can say, honestly, there seems to be more detail on the 4a 5G. There just seems to be a lot more clarity in all the details of this plant here. And also, I like the way this leaf looks a little bit better on the 4a 5G. looks a bit sharper, and the color looks a bit more accurate as well. So yeah, so far I think it's kind of a tie, but the 485G honestly kind of looks a little bit better. It's kind of a little bit disappointing, honestly. So in this photo right here, I would say, again, the color's more warm on the 6A. Honestly, I kind of look, I don't know which one is more accurate. I would say probably about halfway between both. I feel like I look a little bit yellow in the Pixel 6A. And I'm pretty sure my hoodie is more the color on the 485G, but I can say there's more noise on the 485G around the zip, around like my t-shirt here. It definitely does look a bit more noisy, whereas on the 6A, it does look a bit more clear, not quite as saturated, but yeah, I would say it's a bit difficult. The colors are more sort of green over here as well. So I would say both of them are good. There is a difference, but I guess it's personal preference, which one you guys like. Let me know down in the description which one you think looks best. In this one right here, the Pixel 4a 5G is actually a little bit brighter. So a lot brighter over here by this branch. And other than that, they're very, very similar in terms of the details on the trees and stuff. It's about the same, just I would say a bit brighter on the 4a 5G. So this picture right here is using the portrait mode. So it's artificial. It uses Google's AI to artificially put in the bokeh. It doesn't actually use any depth sensor like on the iPhone. And both of them did a good job. They're very, very sharp going around the edges here. Honestly, there's a slight bit between my fingers that isn't quite blurred. But other than that, they are very, very similar. As you can tell, the 4a 5G one is a lot more cool, like I mentioned before. And in terms of on my sleeve here, the lines are more sharp, more detailed on the Pixel 6a. Other than that, both of them did a really good job. I'm assuming they're using the same algorithm to add that blurred background, but yeah, they look very, very similar. So this one I actually went out and did tonight because I needed some low light shots, which I didn't have from the last test that I did the other day. So this is just a picture of this sort of banister by my door, and honestly, very, very similar again here. So a little bit warmer, I would say, on the 4a 5G, oddly in this shot. It just has kind of like a warmer look than it does on the 6a, but very similar. They both handled it very well. So this one right here, this is a very low light situation. I can honestly say there's less noise and more detail on the Pixel 6a. You can see it in the road here with all the little like marks and chips and everything. Just looks nicer on the 6a. And obviously there's some denoising going on the 4a 5G. It just makes it look artificial and not much detail. Very, very smooth, the image. So this one is just of a tree, and this was like a super dark situation. I could barely see this with my own eyes. So the fact that these cameras were able to grab this shot is pretty impressive. In terms of the colors, it definitely wasn't as green as the 6a makes out the tree to be. It definitely looked, to my eyes, more like the 4a 5G. But in terms of the detail, the 6a definitely does have more detail in that tree branch in terms of all the little marks and the shadowy areas. It definitely was able to capture more detail there. So yeah, it's kind of halfway between both. 6a does look pretty good, but then these leaves in the foreground are blurred. Yet again, that seems to be a problem with the 6a. Okay, so when I captured this image right here, the 4a 5G one just looked wrong. As soon as it popped up on my screen, it just looked odd. And I think it's just because of the coloring of everything around this box. It just looks monotone. It doesn't really have much saturation, and it did not look like that. There was a yellow street lamp, and honestly, the 6a is super accurate in terms of how it looked to my eyes. It did have this kind of yellowish look to the stones here, and this green is more accurate. Everything is just more accurate on the 6a. Other than that though, I would say all the detailing and everything like that is very, very similar. And then this last one, again, shows you just the dramatic color shift between both of these images. The 6a one is overly warm. I would say it wasn't quite that warm, but it did have a little bit of warmth to it. There was sort of street lamps around and about, and this is obviously a sandstone building, whereas on the 4a 5G, what is going on right here? This is so blue. It was definitely not that blue at all. It's kind of crazy. So in terms of details, very, very similar yet again. I would say there's actually better details on the 6a. In this sort of ledge here, you can see there's less noise and there's more detail compared to on the 4a 5G. So yeah, honestly, both of these cameras are great. They perform really well in low light, they perform well in just your standard situations. So now we're gonna do a video test using the front camera as well as the back camera, and you'll probably see they're not the best in the world, especially in low light. You're getting a lot of noise and not very great results. So let's go ahead and take a look at those videos. Okay, so this is the front camera test on the Pixel 6a, which is on the left, and the Pixel 4a 5G, which is on the right. First impressions, honestly, Pixel 4a 5G looks a little bit more detailed, but it is over sharpened and it has more true to real life colors, whereas the Pixel 6a has sort of high shadows and it looks a little bit whitewashed. My hair doesn't look quite right in terms of the color. So I'll just have to see how it looks when I get it back to the editor. But right off the bat, kind of looks quite different on both actually. So yeah, I mentioned this in my full review of the Pixel 6a, but yeah, the video is just not very good. When you're taking videos out, even in direct sunlight, it just looks nasty. It just looks kind of over sharpened and grainy and flat. There's no depth whatsoever when you're taking videos on this camera. And I think that's just because there's no way of the camera adding depth to the image. It's just one sensor. It's pretty old sensor from Pixel 2. And there's just no ability for Google to enhance that at the same level as doing with the photos, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I really hope Google work on their video performance in the future. So far, the iPhone is killing it compared to most devices out there. iPhone has amazing video and unbelievable HDR results. I can honestly say iPhone's probably the only smartphone camera I would say is comparable to a professional camera. Anyway guys, that is pretty much it. If you're looking to upgrade from the 4a 5G to the 6a and your only reason is for the camera, yeah, there's no reason whatsoever for you to be upgrading from this device to this device. They're very, very similar in terms of the camera quality. I'm assuming the only real differences are inside the software, which Google has optimized on the 6a. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you're curious about this skin on the back here, this is made by Hardik Suthar, and he is an Indian graphic designer. He made a beautiful skin, which you can pick up from Slickcraps. I'll leave a link down below. You can check out my full dedicated video on that. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. Peace.